there is a need to understand that scaling up and designing for scale are two very different things.
We are very selective on who we bring onto the show, and we only get leaders who push boundaries. Today, it's a great pleasure to host Ratna Vishwanathan, the first Indian CEO at Reach to Teach, a social impact organization with Larry Ellison Foundation being the anchor funder from 2007. Ratna also held leadership positions with Osfam India, VSO, MFIN, UNEP, and UNDP. Hi, Ratna. A very warm welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
This is episode 93, and you happen to be our first social impact leader on the show. And I know you're a former civil servant from the 1987 batch, I believe, and you voluntarily gave it up after 21 years in service to join the development sector. So, what actually led you to taking this leap?
Well, so for 21 years, I've been working with different departments because when you're with the Comptroller and Auditor General, you audit everything that the government of India does, right?
Right.
Then I had a stint with Defense, I had a stint with Prasar Bharati. You go on secondment to different departments. And I learned a lot. To be fair, I think where I stand today is a lot based on the fact of the learning I had when I was with government. For 21 years, you're exposed to systems, you're exposed to every aspect of functioning, and the kind of governance, the kind of structural the kind of management that you have to do. Because in government, you can't fire or you can't incentivize. So you've just got to work with who you have. So all of that gives, I think, one an edge. And also the other thing is when you're in government, you have to hit the ground running, no matter what. Hit the ground running, mess up, own it. That gives you a fair exposure in the sense that wherever you go, you try and learn as fast as you can. That has also helped me in good stead because all the different things that I've done since quitting government, I've learned a lot. It's most enjoyable, very different from what I did. The whole approach, the whole attitude, and there's a lot you have to do yourself. In
Mhm.
government, you're used. Of course, I have to be honest here to tell you that my PAs were underemployed because I'm that control freak who wants to do my own stuff. Right.
Okay.
But having said that, one of the reasons I moved from government was there's a lot of learning, definitely, but you the direct frontline contact with the people you're working with. You're always one removed. You are in a policy realm. And whereas it's a great space because that's how the country runs, at a personal level, when you want to do something that creates a spark, you need to step down and move into the ground.
True.
And that's what's prompted me to move.
Very interesting. I've had CXOs from the government organizations, and people generally have this concept that the government people don't take ownership.
Take ownership. If they didn't,
Yeah,
we wouldn't be running as a country.
absolutely. Absolutely. Generally, people tend to sit in their comfortable sofas and just say, the government should have done this and should have done that. But
I'll tell you one thing. The thing is, government is the largest public facing agency in this country.
Mhm.
Nobody knows what the corporate sector is doing.
Correct,
Nobody knows what the not for profit sector is doing. But
true.
everybody knows what the government is doing. RTI is applicable only to government.
Yes,
Right? So everything that you do or don't do, because you're sitting in this glass house, everybody can see, and so it's so easy to throw stones.
absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Also, look at the fact that if the mechanism and the machinery didn't work, where would we be in the Stone Age?
True.
Now I moved to the other side. And I must say this that the kind of learning, the kind of worldview, and the magnitude you have when you are in the government makes you fit. And look at all the people who moved out of government and gone to different spaces. They've all done well. Why? Because of the learning and the orientation within government. So, whereas it's easy to bash, I'm not a government basher.
No, no, I completely echo your sentiment. Back to you. You entered the education sector just around the lockdown, I think around 4 years
Exactly
ago.
at the time of lockdown.
Yeah.
1st
So,
April 2020.
wow. The origins of RTT has started working basically in India in 2007.
That's right.
And this was in Gujarat by basically bringing out of school tribal children into the learning net, and they ended up carrying the food just to have the people also come in and join the schools. What was very interesting to me was that when you joined in 2020, you actually started saying that, okay, while the community piece is important, but let's do something different. You went after the state education departments. What actually led you to build and foster this relationship, and how important is the community building itself as far as the education sector is concerned?
Community is a critical aspect if you want to improve education, especially for low resource schools. The 2022 UDICE data that the education department puts out shows that 62 children out of every 100 go to government schools in this country, right?
Wow.
About 143 million children go to government schools. Now, government schools are under resourced. We all know this. But also, we have to understand that these are standing because government provides the infrastructure with no commercial eye to it. There is nothing that is driving improvement, which typically happens when revenue is got out of a system. But they've created the infrastructure, they've hired teachers. What has happened is over the years, it has gone down the path of being not very efficient.
Mhm.
There are 100 reasons for it. And you have your little oasis. Let's say in one state, there are 500 government schools. There will be at least 15 of them, which will be excellent. But then that's personality driven. They may have an extra smart headmaster. They may have a very committed bunch of teachers, but that is not systemic.
Mhm.
That's just a tiny little pocket of excellence. Now, what happened is when I joined, I realized that from 2007 to 19, we'd been working in the field intensely. We worked in 3 districts of Gujarat where we worked with community, with school management committees, with teachers, with parents, with children. So you kind of had a very in depth, deep understanding of how education in low resourced environments work at the ground level. So the three
Mhm.
districts that we worked with, Kutch, Bharuch, and Morbi, we were able to make a difference in the schools we intersected with. We brought teachers from the UK to train the teachers in India to strengthen their teaching practices. But none of this is sustainable. The moment those people go and your ecosystem is not supporting it, it dies. And new teachers keep coming, so it will die. This is when I realized that whereas it's great to have pockets of excellence,
Mhm.
pockets of excellence never scale up. And I've seen this. I've been now in the development sector for more than 15 odd years, right?
Mhm.
They don't scale up. So there is a need to understand that scaling up and designing for scale are two very different things, right? And that is when we decided to do this pivot, saying that we've learned so much. Now, what are we going to do with this learning? How are we going to use it for the largest possible outreach? So that's when we moved to first MOU with the education department of the government of Gujarat. And
Mhm.
today we support Gujarat with a lot of things. There is Mission Schools of Excellence. It's a World Bank, AIIB, and Gujarat government funded 6-year initiative for improving education in 20,000 schools in Gujarat. So
Wow.
we are the technical support unit for the government of Gujarat on this. We are also the team that helps the government of Gujarat with the whole accreditation framework, inspecting schools, generating school report cards for overall school improvement. I mean, there is a lot. We work with the GCRT to strengthen teaching and learning material, teacher training, all of that we're doing in Gujarat. But how does it translate to scale? When you train teachers, those teachers fan out across every school in that state. So I will create a cadre of master trainer teachers who in turn will do peer to peer dissemination to other teachers. And so every school in the state is being impacted. It's not
Mhm.
one school, right?
Correct.
So that is when I say when you design for a scale, your entire approach is different. Your
Absolutely.
approach is to use the existing machinery
Mhm.
of that government has to offer. And at the end of the day, government has the largest outreach and the largest infrastructure. So for scale, you have to work with government. You cannot not work with government. So this led us to engaging. And then, of course, I'm what you call an Ashant Atma. And I'm like, we can't do this in one state. So then we tied up with the government of Haryana to do an accreditation framework for them. And then, as a It was a conscious decision that the Northeast, we felt, an area that was being left behind by a lot of development organizations, because it's difficult. The terrain is difficult, access is difficult, approach is difficult, road communication isn't the best, right?
Right.
So we took that on as a challenge, saying children everywhere need to learn. And we started engaging, and I must tell you, we've had a most wonderful experience with the governments of these two states. They are forthcoming, they are welcoming, and we have been able to do such a lot here, and the same design for scale. So we look and we approach education as a supply chain, because it's incremental. You start from class 1, you learn till you reach grade 10 or 12, and then you are in a position to decide, do I want to do higher education if my parents can afford it? Do I want to do a school to work transition? Because now I have learned along the line and I have a certain benchmark of understanding.
Right.
Now today, what really surprises me, when I watch it, I find there are agencies who say we will work only on FLN, that is foundational literacy and numeracy. Not a bad thing, but what about the rest of them?
Mhm.
Right? Then there are, for instance, funders who come out and say, you know what, I will fund STEM for girls. What happens to the boys? They're in the same class, right? When you say that I'm focusing on the girl child, I think there needs to be an understanding between equality and equity.
Very well said.
Equality is when you create the same environment for both boys and girls, because both need to learn.
Right.
Equity is when you take extra steps to create either infrastructure or environment or access specifically for girls within the equal structure. Right. So
Very
I'm
well
not
said.
able to connect with the fact that we focus only on girls. I don't. I focus on all children. All children need to learn.
True.
Within that, creating that extra space where there's a gap is a different story. But we did this in Arunachal. I must tell you this. In Arunachal Pradesh, we took this whole challenge that we will improve the performance of children in the board exams. The cabinet had given a target to see a 10% improvement.
Okay.
We said, okay, now this is our opportunity. Let's take this on. So what we did was we started right from the beginning. We designed and rewrote. We took CBSE textbook. If you look at it, whether you're an adult or whether you're a child, play is something that attracts everybody, right? Management games is what? Play at the end of the day, right? So
True.
we said, okay, let's take that element, take into account that these are low resource environments, and instead of cribbing sarkar ye nahi deti, wo nahi deti, blackboard nahi
Mhm.
hota, take whatever is available
Right.
and use it imaginatively.
Mhm.
So we took existing textbooks and we put activities into these chapters. So there were things for children to touch, feel, hear, do. And most interestingly, that government teacher who had become so apathetic because the system had really not dealt with them in a inclusive way, suddenly became interested because they were part of that activity. उनको कराना चाहिए था ना बच्चों को. They engaged with
Right.
children, so it became interactive. Now, and these were not random. We
Mhm.
took NCRT learning outcomes and linked activities to those learning outcomes so that children actually learned, and not by
Mhm.
rote but through comprehension. Then, to make sure that this was rolled out uniformly across the state, we wrote very, very detailed teacher handbooks so that every teacher will roll out the activity in the exact same way. Otherwise, you can't reach your learning
Absolutely.
outcomes, right? And then we, of course, with the help of the state, set up district task forces, because we are working at the ministry level, at the education department level. So you have to create cadres within the department to support everything that you're doing. And they make sure that whatever is being rolled out on ground, at the school level, at the district level, is being done in the right way.
Okay.
Now, Arunachal doesn't have a very good internet connectivity. We set up a simple telephone helpline. So, any teacher who has a doubt about the activity, despite those detailed instructions, can call, and within hours we respond. And what is it extra that we have done? Nothing. We've not given extra classes to the teachers
Mhm.
because government teachers don't want to do extra work. We have not created any remedial things which over and above what already exists. We've used the system. And today I can say with great pride, Arunachal government's board exams for 24, 10 standard performance was up by 10% and 12th grade performance was up by 12%. And
Fantastic.
I can say we did it. We did it. And
Yes,
just me and my small team. My team is fabulous. They are passionate, they are committed, they're dedicated, and we work as a team. Okay, you have designations because of whatever structure you have, but we work as a team. And I think that's what works.
true. So, from a leadership perspective, I'm very keen to understand how different is leading in a government and how different is it leading in a, let's say, in a social enterprise.
It's very different. I think in government, you are completely responsible for what you are doing, but you are not responsible for the whole framework. Here, you lead from the front. So the entire ownership and the responsibility is that of you and your team. There is no
Correct.
third person you can pass it on to. I think, as far as leadership is concerned, people keep talking about being professional. I don't understand that. Because for me, I think what is key is a one to one connection with the people that I work with. I have to engage with them as that person first. And if I can connect with the person, that person will deliver way beyond what is required, because once you make an emotional link and an
Mhm.
emotional contact, and I've been told you have a very personalized way of management, and I love it. I think it works. And I think the other thing is, as a leader, I feel that you can't go wrong if you are kind. You
Yeah,
can drive 100 things. I can be this, I need this by tomorrow. No. You have to be inclusive and say, hey guys, can we do this? And if there's a problem, let's look at it right now so that we'll be able to deliver tomorrow. So we sit and we ideate and we work. You can't be autocratic. You can't just pass orders and, oh, it doesn't work at all. And I honestly believe when people say be professional, what is professional? Define professional for me. For me,
correct.
professional is doing the work with all your heart, delivering where it is required, meeting the deadlines that others have given you because you owe it to them to deliver.
True.
That is professional. Not being cold and removed from the people you work with. We eat a lot, by the way. Our entire life is centered around food in that office. And anybody goes anywhere, they come back with whatever is the local available mithai, something. These
True.
small things, eating together, hanging together, it creates the kind of synergy and empathy and warmth that probably leads to far better delivery than
Correct.
you when you're sitting within structured frameworks and deciding that this is my matrix and this is what I need to do. Doesn't work,
Mhm.
man. We are human at
True.
the end of the day.
Could be the learnings that you have got from leading a non-profit that is focused on education.
We are basically two entities. One is the UK charity.
Mhm.
The other is a foundation, which is a Section 8 company,
Okay.
right? So the foundation is technically a non-profit. For me, as Reach to Teach Private Limited, master services agreement for a consultancy delivery for the longest time with the UK charity. But
Okay.
now, after I've taken over, I've decided that we should also look at doing a little more work, maybe working with the private sector or whatever, because education is not limited to just government children, it is children in this country. 15% children here go to the high end privileged schools where the best in terms of framework, infrastructure, approach, teaching and learning material, teacher student ratio, delivering competency based education, all of that happens. Now, 60 to 63% go to government schools, which are under resourced, but teachers are available, and agencies like ours engage and work and try to strengthen the ecosystem, try to create better opportunities. There is a middle segment of budget private schools. That is a nightmare space because you promise aspirational people like help, like drivers, like people who work as domestics. You promise them that we will give your child an English education.
Correct.
Now, government school admission is not possible for everybody, and the high end schools are out of reach. So with that aspiration that my child will get an English education, this segment, which can ill afford it, puts children into these budget private schools whose only motive is profit.
Right.
So they're not going to give any quality education, and a large number of them are unregulated. They're outside the government framework. They're happening in small, small little houses in two rooms. So that is an ecosystem that really needs to be addressed at some point. Only I mean, I'm not aware how we can do that. That also is an area that probably maybe after we've done a substantial amount of work here
Mhm.
we can look at. And for us, I think what really matters is the fact that we are a young demography. We're supposed to be one of the youngest countries in the world today.
Yes.
Everybody is talking about this great demographic dividend, right?
Mhm.
Now, if your children don't study, if your children don't learn, if your children don't develop skills and come up the curve, you're going to completely miss the bus of that dividend. That is something that is critical, and why we're focusing on government schools. Because, I mean, if 62 out of every 100 go to a government school, that's a substantial number of children.
Absolutely.
And most of them are going to remain within your ecosystem. So they are that population that's going to develop and deliver your multi trillion economy.
True. You actually raised a very valid point. This is something even I have seen when, for example, I was preparing for the engineering or any of these things. They always have the competitive exam mindset that, okay, if you're from a private school, you've got to be something that you've got in there. And I have seen amazing students coming from the KVs of the world,
Okay,
fabulous,
these are some of
hardworking,
the best learning grounds, and they are
seriously.
great levelers because
Uh,
you can be a joint secretary's child, and you can be a peon's child, and you
True.
can be a colonel saab's child, and you're all going to KV. Great
Exactly.
levelers and great learning.
Hmm.
KVs are run by the HRD ministry. It's the Kendriya Vikas Sangathan. They're very good schools, right?
True.
Like,
True.
for instance, I can tell you the person who drives for me, he's a wonderful guy. He
Hmm.
does not discriminate between his daughter and his son, which I really appreciate. But he's very clear. He's saying private school is better than government school.
Exactly.
So I said, why
Exactly.
do you say that? He says, government school mein padhai nahi hoti. I said, okay, I'll get one of your children admission into a government school and let's see the difference. Today he's saying, ye bacha to acha pad gaya. I said, now what do you have to say for yourself? He's saying,
Correct.
ma'am, I've given so much money for the younger fellow. I can't
There
pull
you
him out, but this boy has done better. I said, see, it's how you approach. And I said, talk to your friends who are doing similar things. If he talks to his friends, they
go.
slowly
Exactly.
start creating a ripple of awareness.
Absolutely. Before I jump into the last question, anything that you specifically want to cover?
Yes, I think the only thing I want to cover is that all of us keep saying government needs to do something,
Mm.
right? I think it's organizations like us and a whole host of others who are out there who step into that space saying government at the end of the day has limited resources. There is only so much that they can do. They have competing priorities. What stops organizations like ours to step into that place and fill that gap, and as a country stop blaming the government for every ill that happens?
True.
We need to also take responsibility as citizens to do what we do and try and engage and cover gaps.
The final question that I have, so what is the advice that you have for aspiring educational enthusiasts who want to enter or within the social impact sector, let's say?
See, I think to enter the social impact fray, you need to have a certain passion. Any social sector, not just education, whether it's health, whether it's education, whether it's livelihoods, whether it's gender sensitization, you need to have passion, and passion to drive for bringing change, and the patience and the wherewithal to stick in there, because change doesn't happen overnight. Change is never easy. You have to swallow your ego, you have to swallow your pride, because when you are stepping out to create a better space for those that are vulnerable, You can't afford to let your ego and your pride get into play.
True.
Having said that, I also feel that there's a need for the sector to pay better, because young people are also aspirational. They want to start families, they want to have a home. So there should be a good balance to have a comfortable lifestyle, because everybody's talking about this whole work life balance. All right.
Right.
So I'm that outdated auntie for whom work is everything. So I don't really, for me, work is balance, life is balance. They like this continuum, and I'm a happy person. But I agree with the whole concept of this, and which is why I think if people are comfortable at home, they're likely to deliver much better at work.
Right.
Flexi policies are important to attract the right talent into the sector. If there's a young woman who wants to work but doesn't have the wherewithal to have help at home for childcare, make sure that you give them a hybrid model. They can do that as well. So even if you can't pay them upfront in terms of pecuniary benefits,
Mhm.
create other benefits so that you attract the best talent into the sector. And it's really important to get the best talent into the sector, because you're delivering for the most vulnerable.
True.
And to do that, you have to have the best possible capabilities to do so.
Very
But
true.
then, having said that, for young people coming here, yes, passion, the ability to deal with people patiently, to put ego completely aside, looking at the
Mhm.
larger goal, I think is very important. And also love for what they do.
Absolutely. On that excellent note, it was an absolute pleasure hosting you. I loved the discussion we had, and I can see a lot of
Thank
clips
you.
coming out of it as well. I believe, in fact, you have impacted close to 8.2 million students already. So,
Yes.
wishing you the very best to impacting many, many more lives in India and getting us on the right road ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here today. Thank you.